Get ready to be seeing that sad Mario all over the place, including on our own thumbnail, as there's a serious lack of more neutral expressions from Mario out there. In any case, everyone, how's it going? I've got a quick news update for you from Nintendo's recent financial Q&A, which is not this. The article is based on it, though, but this, as Nintendo, as usual, has asked some questions about the business and all that, and we got a few little tidbits on how things are going. So first off, of course, is the big reason for this video is that, according to Nintendo, Switch 2 sales have been slightly weaker than they expected outside of Japan. I've got the exact quote here. They say, as you indicated, domestic hardware sales exceeded expectations, meaning Japan, while overseas sales were somewhat weaker compared to our internal projections. Meaning in places like the US or really anywhere outside of Japan, the sales of the Switch 2 have been weaker than expected. However, it's actually overperforming in Japan, which Nintendo attributes to sustained momentum following the Switch 2 launch, combined with the release of year-end titles like Pokemon Legends Z8 Switch 2 Edition and Kirby Air Riders, which encouraged a higher proportion of existing Switch users in Japan to migrate to the Switch 2 compared to overseas markets. So even though you may be seeing a lot of news out there about how the Switch 2 is underperforming, keep in mind it is still a record-breaking system, as we just pointed out, I think in a video yesterday, and it's still doing extremely well. It's just that in December, in the holiday season more accurately, the sales were weaker, in particular outside of Japan, than Nintendo expected, which I think is kind of weighing down the overall expectation. So we're going to have to wait and see as to how this momentum continues into the new year. Is it a sign of things to come, or is it just kind of a one-off, especially as a side effect of the Switch 2 being available in abundance, which they also mentioned here, including how they began production of the Switch 2 earlier than most new systems. Related, Nintendo was asked about the possible impact of rising component costs with the whole AI race thing going on right now. And they mentioned that they don't really expect any immediate changes in the future. They work on long-term contracts, and it shouldn't affect anything this fiscal year, which is great. However, they do mention they'll be keeping an eye on things, of course, and while there's been no decision made on the future price changes for Switch 2 hardware, that's always something that could come into account later. But for right now, there's no immediate plans for Switch 2 costs to change, or prices to change, or even profitability to be affected, which is good if you're a Nintendo shareholder, most of which I assume we aren't. In any case, continuing on, Nintendo also touched on the fact they had nothing to announce regarding any other anniversaries, including the Zelda's 40th anniversary, which is this year. They did mention they're still celebrating the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Bros., including with the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which is coming up. Then they also touch on one other thing, and that is the Switch 2 editions of a variety of games. And I want to read this comment in particular. Specifically, the question was about the strategy behind free updates for existing Switch titles, to which Nintendo responded, in January, we released a free update for Animal Crossing New Horizons alongside the launch of Animal Crossing for Switch 2 edition. This led to renewed engagement from returning players and increased play on Switch 2, resulting in a positive start to the year. While launching new titles regularly is essential for platform growth, maintaining engagement with existing customers during the transition from Switch to Switch 2 over multiple years is equally important. By updating popular Switch titles such as Animal Crossing New Horizons and Splatoon 3, we aim to sustain activity on Switch while allowing customers to migrate to Switch 2 at their own pace. I think that's a good answer. It makes a lot of sense, and they also do mention over multiple years, so suggests that we could be getting more Switch games, either free updates or Switch 2 editions, over the coming years. We're only 6 months in, or a little over 6 months at this point, 8 months maybe, and which means, yeah, we could be expecting another couple years of content, at least, as it applies to the Switch 1. Now, as to what that means for exclusive Switch 2 games, I'm not entirely sure yet, but hopefully we'll be seeing more of those soon, too. In any case, I think that's a good answer, and overall, this is a fine, normal report, nothing too earth-shattering here, except for maybe the slight surprise to some that the Switch 2 is performing a little bit less than internal expectations outside Japan, but just to clarify or to reiterate, that's still extremely good. It's still the fastest selling console of all time. So even if it didn't quite meet Nintendo's internal projections outside of Japan, that doesn't mean it's failing by any stretch, and especially when you account for the fact that it's overperforming in Japan. So there you go. In any case, everyone, with that, thanks for watching. Of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on the Switch 2 and everything else Nintendo here. We'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.